Hey there, this is James Carberry, founder of Sweetfish Media and one of the co-hosts of this show. For the last year and a half, I've been working on my very first book. In the book, I share the three-part framework we've used as the foundation for our growth here at Sweetfish. Now, there are lots of companies that have raised a bunch of money and have grown insanely fast, and we've featured a lot of them here on the show. We've decided to bootstrap our business, which usually equates to pretty slow growth. But using the strategy outlined in the book, we're on pace to be one of Inc.'s fastest growing companies in 2020. The book is called Content-Based Networking: How to Instantly Connect with Anyone You Want to Know. If you're a fan of audiobooks like me, you can find the book on Audible, or if you like physical books, you can also find it on Amazon. Just search Content-Based Networking or James Carberry, Carbary, in Audible or Amazon, and it should pop right up. All right, let's get into the show.
Hey everybody, Logan with Sweetfish here. As we've been doing all month long throughout January, we continue our countdown of the top 20 episodes of 2019 here in our hashtag Best of 2019 series. Today's episode, coming in at number 8, is a conversation James had with Jen Spencer over at SmartBug Media, who is also the host of SmartBug on Tap. They talk about the power of solo episodes for your podcast and specifically how to do them effectively. To get more episodes coming up in the countdown, make sure you're subscribed to the show in Apple Podcasts or wherever you do your listening. You can also check out the full list at sweetfishmedia.com/blog. Just look for the hashtag Best of 2019 in the categories on the right-hand side of that page.
Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, and I'm joined today by the VP of Sales and Marketing at SmartBug Media, Jen Spencer. Jen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I am really excited to chat with you today, Jen. We actually got to meet up while I was in Phoenix last week. And so I love getting the opportunity to meet up with different friends. We've actually known each other for a while because you've been on B2B Growth, I think multiple times in the past. And we have started helping SmartBug produce a new show that you guys are doing called SmartBug on Tap. And you guys are doing it a little bit differently than other folks that we're helping with their show, because you guys are solely doing solo episodes with that show. And so I wanted to dive into that a little bit in this episode. But before I get into that, can you kind of give a high level picture of what is SmartBug Media? What do you guys do? And then from there, we're going to go into your philosophy on the approach you decided to go with your show.
Sure. No, I'd be happy to. And it's been so great working with Sweetfish, and people who know me know when I meet awesome people, I like to keep them close. So always great. Glad to be partnering with you guys. So SmartBug Media, we are an intelligent inbound marketing agency focused on driving revenue growth for our clients. So what does that mean? That means we look at how do we take smart data-oriented strategies and deliverables and really combine inbound marketing, web design, public relations, sales enablement, and creative to help our clients grow revenue and grow their marketing ROI. So we would love all things marketing and sales enablement and really serve as an extension of our clients, typically of their demand gen team.
Love it. And you guys are growing like crazy. It seems like every other day I'm scrolling through LinkedIn and I'm seeing that you guys, have just hired a key leadership role, or so clearly you're doing something right to be growing at the rate that you're growing. So Jen, I want to go ahead and dive into what we're going to be talking about today, which is solo episodes. I've said for a really long time that solo episodes are absolutely untapped way to do podcasting. I noticed that when I started doing solo episodes on B2B Growth, the download numbers for those types of episodes were far greater than the interviews that I was doing. And I thought it was interesting. So I started doing more of them, and it ended up playing out over the long haul. People would rather, or seemingly would rather hear me talk in a solo episode. And I've got a lot of ideas as to why I think that's the case. I think there's a level of wanting to have intimacy with the host of the show and wanting to hear kind of how they're thinking and how they're learning and growing. And the more they can be vulnerable and share that process, people are wanting to hear that content. But then I also think that there's something about like the tightness of the content and being able to cover like a very specific topic without the variable of a guest kind of rambling on somewhere or taking the conversation a different direction, it's much more controllable. So there's a lot of reasons why I think solo episodes perform well, but you have actually decided to go all in on solo episodes with your show, SmartBug on Tap. And so I wanted to get from your perspective, first, why did you decide to experiment with a show that only did solo episodes?
So first of all, I'm the kind of person who I want to always be on the forefront of whatever it is that we're doing, especially in marketing. And so when I look at the landscape, I see there are a lot of, conversational interview style podcasts out there. Not that there's anything wrong with those, right? They're great. But why would someone want to listen to this podcast? What's going to make this one different from anything else, from anyone else's? So that's one piece. The other piece is we have a culture of experimentation here at SmartBug. And one of our goals is we want to experiment on ourselves and track the effectiveness. And then depending on what the results are, then those are some of the concepts that we roll out to our clients. And it's a really fun job that I get to do. And so it was really intriguing. Like, let's actually try this out. And also we are in the process of launching another podcast, and that will be more of a having a guest on interview style format that will be hosted by our founder and CEO, Ryan Malone. So I wanted to have something that was going to be complementary, that was going to play off of both our strengths as a brand, but also my strength as a marketing and sales leader, and also just be something different and have fun and take a little bit of a chance.
I love it. I am subscribed to the show and have been since we helped you guys get it launched. And the content, every single episode, I find myself wanting to hit play. It's so obviously you guys have gotten really good at honing in on specific topics. How do you, Jen, come up with the topics that end up shaping kind of the content calendar for that solo episode show?
The way I come up with the topics is very similar to the way that I come up with any topic that I maybe want to blog about or guest blog about or speak about at a conference. I'm in my role as a sales leader. I'm both having sales conversations and I'm listening to call recordings all the time of my team, taking sales calls. And so I like paying attention to the questions that my buyer personas are asking us in the sales process. That has been this just treasure trove of content. So that's really the kind of the go-to place for anything that I'm creating. And for kicking off this solo podcast, the first place I went, because we wanted to kind of create a little bit of a backlog of content.
Yep.
So one of the first places I went is I looked at, okay, where have I guest blogged or what have I talked about on stage at a conference that hasn't been packaged in another format? And I love the idea of doing something once and then picking it apart and repurposing it in 10 other ways. I feel like a very successful human being when I'm able to do that. So that's where I went first, just to really get started and make sure I had those first kind of 4 or 5 episodes, right there in the queue.
I love that because, so going back to your first point, I think it's absolutely brilliant. The fact that you're consistently listening to recorded sales calls is so smart. And I don't hear enough people talking about, doing that. So the fact that you're doing it and then you're leveraging the time that you're investing, because I'm sure you're coaching your reps, you're doing a lot, but not just coming up with topics for other forms of content, but that's useful time spent in other areas of the business as well. So the fact that you're gleaning wisdom from those calls and hearing directly from your future customers what they want to learn, I think that's brilliant. And then to your next point, so efficient because you do speak at a lot of conferences. You've written all over the internet on a bunch of different sites. So capitalizing on the thoughts that you've already put on paper and already spoken at different conferences and just repurposing those in a different format. Oftentimes a 30, 40 minute talk that you maybe gave at a sales hacker conference or Flip My Funnel or a variety of other conferences could be sliced and diced into probably, 3 or 4 different podcast episodes. So I think that's a super smart and efficient way to do it. So when you're repurposing content, I would imagine the prep time is not very much. when you're looking at maybe a new idea though, and it's a question that you hear from a call recording, how much time on average are you spending to prep these solo episodes that you're doing?
That's a good question. I think probably about an hour. And I haven't actually like clocked it yet, but I did get a lot written out when I was on a flight from Phoenix to Boston recently. So it's very similar to the process of writing a blog, although it's less intensive because I'm not as much focused on, okay, making sure this is going to be optimized for search, making sure I have the right keywords, making sure I've got the right formatting, grammatical structure, just all of those things when you're putting something into print format. So it takes a little bit less time, but I tend to start like very stream of consciousness. And really, the whole idea of this podcast of SmartBug on Tap came from the fact that somebody said to me, I wish I could just tap into your brain, at various times throughout my week to get questions answered about marketing. Yeah. And I laughed and thought, okay, well, my brain's sometimes a mess, but the SmartBug brain is amazing. Yeah. So let's talk about how do we tap into the SmartBug brain, this collective brain that we have. So that's really where that came from. So I just think about, all right, if someone asked me a question or someone wanted advice, what would I recommend? So it sort of feels like journaling in a way, more than it feels like crafting a piece of content.
Today's growth story revolves around search engine marketing. Delphix, a big data platform, had hired an agency to manage their Google ads a few years ago, but they weren't seeing the results they wanted to see. Being such a technical B2B solution, they set out to find a team that could take on their challenge. After countless proposals, they found the perfect fit: Directive Consulting, the B2B search marketing agency. In just 1 week after launching Directive's campaigns, Delphix saw their lead volume double and their cost per lead drop by 60%. I have a hunch that Directive can get these kind of results for you too. So head over to directiveconsulting.com and request a totally free custom proposal. That's directiveconsulting.com. All right, let's get back to this interview.
I think a lot of people that start to get into solo episodes, they can get crippled by the idea of wanting it to be perfect and they want to spend 3 hours scripting it. So do you more, it's stream of consciousness, or you kind of more using that stream of consciousness to develop an outline? And then when you go to record it, you just kind of piece it, text in your outline triggers a thought and it's just more organic that way? Or is it more structured than that?
I like it to be a bit structured. I'll do an outline and then I might actually script some very specific words and phrases. And hopefully no one thinks that. I
listened to it and I would not think that it was scripted in listening to every episode so far.
So I will thank my theater background for that. So because that's what you don't want. I would give it, my advice is making sure you don't overly script something and then you come across like you're reading. No one wants to hear somebody read, or not nobody, but they're less likely to. We actually have audio blogs on some of our blog posts where it very much is the blog author reading. And that's another format that we're dabbling in right now. But I think people much prefer to feel like it's conversational, like someone is right there talking with them, talking to them, sharing information. So that's the feeling. So I do rely on some very modest theater training that I've had to try to ensure that it doesn't feel very scripted. Yeah. I do like to have a bit of a format in place for myself because I have a tendency to go off on tangents. And so one of the things you had mentioned that you like about the show is how tight it is. Yeah. And in order to keep it tight like that, I do have to make sure I install some guardrails for myself.
To stay on track. That makes sense. And one thing, going back to something you said a little bit earlier, Jen, that I've noticed whenever I write scripts for some of the episodes that we do, maybe it's an intro for a new type of episode that we've been doing or something like that. I've found that writing a script, knowing that I'm going to read it, actually helps me become a better writer because I'm writing like I talk. I'm more intentionally writing like I talk. And I found that as a reader of content, I resonate with content that seems like I'm reading the way the author would talk to me across the table. And so I don't know if that's the same with you, but I think that clearly you are able to write like you talk, because I can't tell that your episodes are scripted. And I've listened to all of them so far. So kudos to you for that. My next question, Jen, how do you think about the length of these solo episodes?
When I think about someone listening to me talk at them, I think, all right, this has got to be pretty short, because otherwise this is going to get to be obnoxious.
Yep.
So I actually didn't think necessarily about, all right, making sure it fits within a certain time frame. And if you listen to the episodes, you'll notice some might be 7 minutes, some might be 9, some are 10 minutes long. I don't think there's any that are longer than 10 when you get to the core of it, right? That are without like the bumpers, in the beginning and end. But really I'm sharing a solution to a problem, and it's however long it takes to share that solution. Keeping in mind, I like to be able to be with someone on their drive from their home to the grocery store, right? We're not talking about you're sitting in an hour-long commute, but we're busy people. Time is our currency. How do I make sure that I'm able to provide value very, very efficiently for the listener?
Yep. Have there been any, because this is something that I've noticed that I like to keep a similar kind of time range with our solo episodes. And I've noticed at least my own psychology when I'm looking through and I'm listening to a show, I am more likely to tap on the episode that is shorter because it's like achievable in a sense. And so I'm like, oh, I can knock out 3 of these episodes because they're only 5 minutes a piece, as opposed to me only I don't know if it's, the Enneagram 3 in me, or I don't know what it is, but I can either listen to one episode that's 15 minutes long, or 20 minutes long, or I can go and listen to this other podcast because they've got 3 episodes that are 5 minutes long. So there's something there that I absolutely think the shorter episodes work. And so that has then informed when I'm thinking through a topic that I want to do a solo episode on. If I notice that I'm going a little bit longer, I'll think, man, could this actually be 2 different episodes? Am I talking about ideas that are different enough where I could split that up into 2 different episodes? Has that happened to you yet? Or, is that something you've considered or thought about?
Definitely. So actually the podcast that just went live today on the day that we're recording this was about trade shows. And I actually explicitly say, like, I could talk for hours about trade show marketing. So, but I want to talk about something very, very specific. And that also goes back to, I used to be a high school English and theater arts teacher. And you can't even give students directions all at once. You can't say, all right, I want you to move to this side of the room, take out your book, take out a piece of paper, write your name on the paper. They get overwhelmed and they start doing things, so you have to go, all right, move to the other side of the room. Okay, everyone's there. All right, now take out your book. And it sounds ridiculous, but it's just the way we're just wired as humans. I don't know. So I just think, all right, am I running the risk of overwhelming the listener and making them feel like I can't, this is not for me. So if the goal is to provide helpful tactical advice that they can implement immediately, then I'm also thinking about that as I'm laying out the content as part of my quote lesson plan.
It is something I say all the time, especially as we're adding more and more co-hosts onto B2B Growth. I find myself saying this multiple times a week, is the more granular and the more focused the content, the better it's actually going to be. For the exact point you just made, it's going to be more tactical and more helpful the more focused it is. So I love that story, and that was a recent example that you could share there. The last part of my last question for you, Jen, is around kind of just the really super tactical. How do you actually record these solo episodes? Because you're not interviewing someone else, so you're not doing it on Zoom or Uber Conference or something like that. So how are you actually recording the content?
It's so awesome because I could just do it just pound out like 5 of them on a Saturday afternoon. I love it. But I use GarageBand on my Mac, and I have a USB mic. And GarageBand has a narration vocal setting that I like to use because I feel like it gives it just a clean, like full sound. And that's it. I record it with the mic, and then it's really simple.
Yeah. No, it's super simple.
Just turn off any notifications and close the door and hope a dog doesn't bark. But And if it happens, guess what? It's only a 10-minute episode. So I can just.
Yep. I mean, that's how I do the majority of our solo episodes as well, is exactly that. I'm using GarageBand. I've even used voice memos on my phone when there's an idea and maybe I'm traveling and I know I'm not going to be behind my laptop or behind my computer for a bit and I really want to get the idea out there. I've found that the audio quality just recording into your iPhone and voice memo is actually very, very helpful. So it's obviously not going to be quite as polished from an audio standpoint as if you're using a USB mic using GarageBand, but that's another option for those that maybe don't have GarageBand or are looking for an alternative way to do it. Jen, this has been fantastic. Is there anything else that you'd like to share before we wind down the episode today?
The only thing is I just encourage everyone out there, just take risks. And that's the beauty of digital marketing and the internet. And you can test things at a really low cost, low investment, and you may have amazing results, but you kind of never know. And so you can sit there and overthink it to death, but just kind of go for it and try it out. And I was nervous. To do this. It felt like very, very vulnerable, like just being out there all on your own. Mm-hmm. But so far the feedback's been phenomenal. So I'm glad we went this route.
I love it. Jen, if someone wants to stay connected with you, they want to learn more about SmartBug, what's the best way for them to go about doing both of those things?
So SmartBug Media, it's just smartbugmedia.com. I'm super active on social media. So you can hit me up on Twitter at Jen Spencer or find me on LinkedIn. Just look for Jen Spencer at SmartBug Media. If you do connect with me on LinkedIn, let me know you heard me on this show, just so I have some context for how you came to know who I am.
Love it. And if you get value from B2B growth, you will absolutely get value from Jen's show, SmartBug on Tap. So just whatever podcast player you're using, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever, just search SmartBug, one word, on tap, 2 different words, and you'll find Jen's show. Subscribe. You're going to love it for all the reasons that we talked about earlier in this episode. They're short. It's super helpful content. So make sure to do that. Jen, thank you so much for your time today. This has been phenomenal. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big 3, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.